So welcome to week 10 of the From Linear to Circular London Online programme. You've made it through 10 weeks, and I saw in the chat window many of the people responding to our question about how many of these you've attended live, and many of you are attending your 9th or 10th webinar, and many of you I know have rewatched them as well. So congratulations, and I guess in this session today, Colin, we're going to be testing whether you've been paying attention during these 10 weeks. With a quiz.
It's a quiz, which is, yeah, okay. You're being a little bit tongue-in-cheek by saying we're testing whether people are paying attention. Really, it's a chance for us to recap on all of the sessions that we've had thus far. We've made it in a way we hope it's going to be a bit of fun. We're going to break you into teams and set this challenge for you to see how well you can recall some of the key facts and figures and some of the conversations that we've had throughout. We've put this quiz together, which we'll put to you in just a few minutes' time. And perhaps the most challenging thing today, though, isn't really the questions we're going to ask people. It's a challenge for Anna Barnow to accurately set up breakout rooms, which has been a little struggle for her in this whole series.
It hasn't. I mean, we've all had to work out different aspects of Zoom during this time in lockdown, and almost in every single. By the way, it's almost a de facto thing that has to happen in any online broadcast or stream, that one of the people who's supposed to be speaking is muted when they start saying something, and someone has to say, oh sorry there, you're muted, and then the conversation carries on. That's basically just one of the rules of Zoom, and there we are.
Well, there's another one, which is when you invite someone on, almost always the first thing they say is, can you hear me? What I thought would be nice to kick off with, Seb, would be to have a look back at some of the things that people said right at the start of this series, and as I play around with my machine to get that up. Because, you know, throughout this series, we've been using the Zoom group, the Slack group quite extensively, and I thought what I could do today was have a look at that Slack group and trying to draw out some insights. But because it's actually so busy in that Slack group, and there's so many comments that you lot have all been putting in there over all of the weeks, it's actually a very difficult task to go through all of the different comments that you've come up with attached to the homework and the different weeks and the Monday questions and so on. But I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to look back at the Monday question that was set number 1. It was Anna in her garden, and the question she asked was, what was your aha moment? I'm going to turn this off here so I can see better. So what was your aha moment when it came to the circular economy? And I picked out a handful of responses from there, and we'll stick a few of them up on the screen as we can see here. A lot of them were about waste, which is understandable as people's inroads to what the circular economy is all about. Some people talked about how they wanted to change their lifestyle, or they think about this every time they go shopping. The first two I've picked out here, Anneli Selvefors mentions the Waste Equals Food documentary, which I actually haven't seen, but I know that it's seen as the inspiration.
Are we supposed to be seeing these, by the way, Colin?
Well, you can't see these?
No, not at the moment. We see the webinar will be starting soon.
Oh. Is that another rule of... Okay.
There we go. That's it. Yes.
We have perfect. It. Okay, so the first one I was drawing was Annie Selvefors, talks about the Waste Equals Food documentary, which I think extensively features McDonough and Brongart of Cradle to Cradle. And I know it was the inspiration behind the chap, I think it's the Deso Carpets fella. He watched this documentary one night in the Netherlands, and he realized he's running his business in the wrong way and changed things as a result. Have you seen that one, Seb?
I haven't actually seen that documentary. I've read Cradle to Cradle Design though. And I guess that's really one of the foundational principles that we've been talking about throughout this series, this notion of how do we go back to the beginning and design things differently, and how do we start to view all resources inputs for something else.
And really inspirational that someone in the case of Deso Carpets went and did something about it. And of course, Anneli is talking about how it's opened her eyes, and maybe she is doing something about it herself too.
One of those things, that makes me always think about, Colin, is that very often, and I'm sure you're confronted by this quite often. It's a very reasonable question: is how do I go and do this? What do I do about this? And that's obviously a very significant part of why we run this program from Linear to Circular. And one of the things that I see time and time again in a lot of stories, and the one you've just shared about Deso is another one, is the power of ideas, the power of really understanding a mindset shift, and then how that might apply to the world you live in, as the Deso case illustrates. So hopefully some of you have had similar experiences during this program, or will have as the program progresses into its next phase as well.
And it can be quite disempowering, as Andrea might well be pointing at here, about our lack of agency that sometimes we have in a systemic problem. The difficulty in doing something about it sometimes can weigh on us. And what Andrea's quote here reminds me of is something that Ken Webster always said, and of course we had Ken, I think it was week 4 of the series, where he said, you know, if you want to be the responsible consumer, then in effect you have to be an expert in everything, because today you're buying a television, tomorrow you're buying your groceries and all sorts of different products and so on. Then you'll be selecting who your energy provider is, and so on and so forth. So changing the system can have all of those beneficial effects, that changing the consumer and making them an expert in everything actually is a very difficult job.
I love this from Alexander, giving a shout out to the Disruptive Innovation Festival. What a fantastic event. Glad you enjoyed it. And obviously a very good example of that sort of shift from thinking about it as just recycling to fundamentally operating businesses differently, which again, I think is a way more empowering way to look at it.
Yeah, I thought you liked the difference there. A couple others, but there's only 3 more. So Anna is talking about the waste side of things and how that's a lot of people's first step into the circular economy. There's quite a few comments actually, Seb, in there about, well, I tell you what, I'm going to park what I was about to say because it's a quiz question. So let's not bother with that. But I liked what Jose's saying here about reframing the problem. Not a slug problem, but a duct efficiency. And sometimes, of course, that is the solution, is we're looking at the problem in the wrong way, and we need to be a bit more abstract about it. The final one I'm going to show you is the one that made me laugh the most, and I've taken the person's name out of it because she does say it's a bit embarrassing. So this one here, when she was obviously on Tinder, came across someone attending the World Circular Economy Forum, and thought, what on earth is that? I don't know whether she was looking that up in order to try and impress a potential date. In fact, we don't even know if that date happened, and maybe we could find out.
Yeah, I guess it shows you there's lots of different paths into the circular economy.
Tinder's one of many.
One of them, yeah.
Okay, so that was a quick look at some of your comments that came in about your aha moment. Seb, I just want to quickly ask you, what was your aha moment, just before we go to the quiz?
Yeah, I mean, actually, when I joined the MacArthur Foundation in 2014, I was an intern, and I was someone who had an understanding of, well, I had an interest or a concern about sustainable and environmental issues. And actually, the truth is, I joined the foundation because I was interested in the topic, but also because I needed an internship, I needed something to do. And I'd always found these topics extremely disempowering. And I can remember, I'm not sure if there was one specific moment, but sometime quite early on in my time at the foundation, suddenly felt like there was, it was so solutions focused. It was probably one of, in a meeting with Ken Webster or someone like that, one of the inspiring people we have here, where it just suddenly clicked that this is a solution at the appropriate scale to actually achieve something. And suddenly I realized that I was part of something extremely powerful and exciting.
Yeah, I can understand that, because I think I was similar, sustainability background, and realized when I came across the circular economy, it was a system to aim for as opposed to something to be against. And I was against quite a lot of things that are going on in the world, but without quite having that vision about what I wanted.
And I'll just add one more thing to that, is that I hadn't necessarily realized just how much I was just against so much until I realized that until you're kind of confronted with this idea of, well, what are you actually for? And then you start to realize the circular economy is a vision, it is an ambition, a set of principles. And then you realize, well, what up until now, I've really not had an idea of what I think we should be doing instead.
Okay, so our own personal aha moments added on to those you gave us at the start. And as I said, I really loved looking through all those comments again today, and lots of other comments around the Slack group. This session today is about the whole 10 weeks, everything that we've experienced so far. And as we've told you, we've set up a little quiz. And in a second, Anna's going to break you into groups. But before we do that, Seb, why don't you give us the rules of the quiz?
So you'll be put into breakout rooms. We're going to share a link in the chat to a file that downloads the quiz questions. Write down your answers either on, I guess, a piece of paper in front of you, or perhaps in the notes on your computer or something like that. So just appoint a scribe or a spokesperson to own the answers, so you have them in one place. The goal is not to use Google or any kind of search functions to find these answers, because this is not a quiz where there's any kind of punishment, or actually it's not very motivating, but not really any reward for doing particularly well. It's about thinking about the answers and reflecting on the 9 weeks, and we'll be doing that when we come back. So write down the answers somewhere, whether it's on your computer or notepad, go through the PDF document together and talk about them together, and try and do it based only on recalling what you've experienced from this session. We have 15 minutes, which you'll see as a timer clock in the top right corner. And I believe, Colin, you can still communicate with us via the chat function if you have any questions or concerns. The chat function is global.
Yeah, global. Brilliant. So Anna's going to break you into a group now. You'll get a wee message saying that that's happening. You can see the link to the quiz there. Everyone could download that. And we'll see you in 15 minutes' time. So I think we're pretty much full on in terms of numbers, back from breakout rooms, maybe 1 or 2 still to come. Someone is saying in the chat window, I told you it was Colin. I think that could be in reference to, can you name these hosts? We'll see. Seb, we're going to go through all of the answers to the quiz, and we're going to ask you all, please, to, just tell us whether you got it right or not. And anything you really want to have a hot debate about, we might have a chance to do that on 1 or 2 occasions. So on to question number 1, I reckon.
So question number 1 was, which of these statements most accurately reflects EMF's views on waste? Should I just say the right answer, Colin, or do you think we should go over all the multiple choice options?
Just go for the right answer, I reckon.
The right answer to that question was B. We have to design waste out of the system from the start. This notion of how do we design out waste and pollution.
And you've got a real bee in your bonnet about that particular answer as well, haven't you?
I don't know if it's fair to call it a bee in my bonnet. At the beginning of the series, obviously, we had a conversation about the difference between designing from waste and design out waste. Design from waste is a reasonable place to start when you look at the aha moments we were talking about earlier, in terms of people being noticing that waste is a problem and being frustrated and disappointed by that. So then you start to say, well, what can I do with that waste? But of course, really what you want to do is design something from the beginning that never is going to become waste, because there's only so much you can do by designing from waste. Happy to chat about that in Slack with anyone who wants to chat about it always.
I think there's an interesting question about, is it a misunderstanding of the concept if you're designing from waste, or is it a different interpretation of the concept if you're designing from waste? Well, obviously from our perspective, like Ellen MacArthur Foundation's perspective is, it's a misunderstanding, and we've got a very clear view on what we think the circular economy is, but there are different interpretations out there.
I also think to say that circular economy is about design out waste, not design from waste, is not to say that if you're designing from waste that you're doing a bad thing. And if that's the other thing that gets confused, it's almost like you're accusing yourself, how dare you design? No, designing from waste is still a good thing to do if you can do it. It's just, for me, especially from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation point of view, it's not part of a future economic model if we get things right from the start. So
question 1 answer was B. I'm going to think a lot of us got the right answer to that one. Question 2, I think is a very tricky one. How many orbs on the butterfly diagram can you name?
Should we put these in the chat?
Yeah, great one. So do you have the answer in front of you, Seb?
I know the answer.
Go on then. Read it out.
Well, yeah, so I mean, post as I'm going, I'm going to start on the biological side, which should give you guys a good chance to jump in there with some of your ones, but some of your like technical side, which may be easier to remember. But on the biological side, you've got a notion of cascading. That's one of the loops. And you have this notion of chemical extraction for biogas, going slightly wider. And then we've got the ultimate loop on the biological side, which is the returning to the soil, returning to regenerate. On the technical side, which is where really we're talking about shorter cycles compared to the biological side, there's share, maintain, prolong, reuse, remanufacture, and recycle. And that's in and out. And we talk about the inner loops providing the most value because of the most embedded energy and labor.
And then there's consumer and user. And isn't there fishing as well? Or is there fishing like just gets a reference in text?
Yes. All right. Well, I didn't realize you wanted me to name every single bit of text that exists on the butterfly diagram.
That's what the question says. Repair, I would say, is also maintain, prolong.
Yeah. If you said repair, keep a point.
Yes. How are we doing for points? Thumbs up if you think you've done well so far. I'm seeing 2 fingers up.
Not many thumbs up.
Middling thumb. Right, question 3, another tricky one. Ken Webster talks about, well, why does he argue we need to think of the application of a circular economy as a sandwich? I like this one. I like Ken's metaphors. Seb, have you got a good answer to this?
So, I mean, what he talks about is this notion that we put a lot of time and a lot of focus on the meat of the sandwich, you know, the cheese or whatever it is, which is really how do we produce and make things, cradle to cradle design we were talking about earlier. But what about the two, you know, what you want the whole sandwich, and so what are the two things that hold that together? And he talks about ideas, our worldview, systems thinking essentially, and enabling conditions. What are the things that actually set the rules of the game, which those things play out in finance, policy, tax?
Lovely. Okay.
Right. So I'm not going to be quizzed constantly by you, Colin. So question 4 was, tell us each of the principles of a circular economy. So there's 3 principles for a circular economy. What are the 3 principles of a circular economy?
Yeah, we want to get people answering these questions first too, but I'll answer this one.
Oh, Anastasia just jumped straight in there.
She saved the day. It regenerates natural systems. But the principle's the same, right? Perfect. I'd say that's a great answer, Anastasia. Okay then.
Question 5. Which of these drivers for change was not presented in the first webinar? So talking about what are the things that are making the circular economy, what's driving the urgency of a switch from linear to circular?
Well, I like to speak about the drivers for change. I think they've got a great deal of relevance when it comes to talking about how we need a different economic model. Are you on the mute here? And so we did talk about economic losses and structural waste, and that's the concept that, for example, office buildings tend to be unused for at least half of the time. Our roads are underutilized and our vehicles underutilized. We did talk about supply chain risks and how you've got these fragile supply chains, and I think that's become quite evident under COVID as well, that when supply chains aren't working particularly well, all sorts of problems can occur as a result. Natural systems degradation is definitely a driver for change, and that's reflected in that principle number 3. So Adrian, absolutely right. We didn't talk about consumer behavior. So that wasn't one of the drivers for change that we talked about. But of course, we're well aware people do like talking about consumer behavior a lot. It's not something that's necessarily in the EMF model, but it hovers around somewhere, linking some of the pieces together. Carolina, yeah, I see what you're saying there, Carolina. You were talking about 2 different ones, but the answer for us is D. Well, it was D. We didn't talk about that. So how do we get on the next one, the picture round? Who wants to paste in, or microphones on? Who fancies doing a microphone on to tell us what they came up with in the picture round?
You might have to post in the chat, just say me, because it's impossible to scan through the gallery in enough time.
Or if you're quick, turn on your mic and just
do it.
Hello.
Go on, Amanda.
Great. Well, we weren't entirely sure whether these were all the same product, but I think we kind of came up with a possible for each of them. We thought the first one, somebody spotted it's a male cosmetic brand, possibly that's part of Loop, where you actually send back the packaging to be refilled at the end of use and returned to you. B, we thought was sustainable packaging, perhaps in mycelium, something like that. C looks as though it could be the headphones that we're referred to, which are a modular design, possibly a product as service subscription headphones. And D, likely reusable nappies, diapers.
So close, so close. So you got the first three spot on. Anyone got the correct answer for D? I mean, you're super close, Amanda. What's the name of the business? We'll take Viga. I think technically it's Circo now. I think they're called CIRCO, but Viga's, I think they evolved from Viga. So yeah, that's the idea of baby clothes can be utilized, or rather you can get access to baby clothes and upgrade them as your kid grows. Super, great answer.
Very good, Amanda.
Yes, well done, your team.
And my team, yep.
Right, who wants to do mics on for number 7? What do we mean by zooming in and zooming out? Just turn on your mic and tell us.
Go on, Manasai.
Manasai.
Yes, this was actually been one of probably like the favorite that I picked for the last Monday question, which is zooming into user needs and zooming out into systems.
Yep, zooming into user needs and zooming out into systems, or something similar to that, as in, it's not about the precise words, but that's basically the idea. Great job. So question 8. Let's have another person jump in. Question 8, in relation to plastics, what is the global commitment? Who wants this one?
Oh, some faces being pulled here. Agony faces. It's plastics. So I'll go for it. Oh, agreements among 20%. Transition to, yeah, there's an element of definite truth in there, Anastasia, that something like I think the 20% is probably in reference to companies who produce about 20% of the world's plastics are signatories to what we're calling our global commitment. The commitment is that by 2025, 100% of their plastic packaging will be recyclable, reusable, or compostable. I think I'm in the right ballpark with that answer.
No, you've done well there, Colin, and Paul's jumped in and supported you as well. And I think the thing about it as well, it really links to a theme that we've talked about in this series, I guess, but how do we change these systems? And plastics is one example where we're digging into that. We talked about it in week 8 with Andrew in terms of how do we just deliberately disrupt the system. And these targets are this global commitment, these targets are one piece of that for our plastics work.
Right, question 9, John.
If John Denver's the answer, what's the question?
Oh dear. Okay, we know the answer was John Denver. Yeah, we're just zipping through it now. So she brought her answer from John Denver. It was a passing reference she gave, and I wondered if you'd pick up on it. Did you get the answer without me blurting it out there? I see some thumbs going up. That's great. Okay, so I can't blurt out the next one. Regenerative or holistic grazing. I'm sure that's going to be a bit tricky. Who wants to give us their team's definition of that? What's regenerative holistic grazing?
Tricky, but a recent one. We just talked about it last week. Someone be brave.
I'll have a go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about this really the intensive grazing of animal, basically across the different fields, really trying to create the conditions that wild animals would have created before in the wild and stuff like that. Sort of.
What is it the animals are doing, Sophie?
Oh, they're grazing and just walking on it and pushing all the nutrients back and so on.
Yeah, their hooves are breaking up the soil. And there was something about that interaction between their breath and saliva and the soil. I can't quite remember exactly how Hunter worded it, but she's quite big on that point too. But I'd say that was a point for your team, Sophie, and anyone else who got that. It's the process of mimicking how hoofed animals act in the wild by moving them on as they would if they were a predator. They're closely packed together and they move on quite quickly. Compacting the carbon, yes. Putting the carbon back in, or yeah, creating the conditions so the carbon could go back in, I think. I'm sure pooing is part of it too, Lucy.
All part of the system.
Yes.
Question 11 was, what was the name of the documentary that we asked you to watch towards the end of the program? Colin, you were heavily involved in making it. See if anyone could beat you in the chat, but what was the name?
The name, or a couple of people got it right. They're all getting it right.
There we go, System Reset.
System Reset.
Tell us if you enjoyed System Reset in the chat as well. Some great feedback in the Slack channel, but really a good film that you can watch a couple times and still be getting insights from.
Right, if 92% is the answer, what's the question? Who wants to tell us the answer to that? What did your team come up with? C, cars, C. Yeah, it looks like you all got that one right. The time a car spends parked wasn't their homework assignments. Right, I think we're all spot on with that one. So I think we can move on. Sorry, Adrienne, you're wrong on that one. It's not B. Oh, you're joking us, right? And a circular economy for fashion.
What
Which
makes
is
up a
the right
circular
answer
for
to that?
fashion?
Circular economy for fashion.
We've got some A's coming through, which is A, B, and C from Anna D there, all of them. We were after A for this one. So we use safe and healthy materials, get them used much longer, and recycle clothes into new clothing. A tricky question because there are elements of B and C that probably are part of the new system, but we are looking for that vision.
You know, I would be annoyed actually if I was asked that question, because I think the answer is B and C as well. Speaking as a person.
Still only points for getting A right.
Right, very briefly, let's just rattle through quickly. 14, a circular business model. I can't really do this one quickly, but who wants to give us, turn the mic on, name a circular business model and give a brief description of it. What we're not looking for here is the name of a business, but rather what would you call the business model that they apply, and how does that business model work? For example, selling direct to a consumer and waving goodbye to a product is a business model.
Product as a service, that's a good one, Paul.
Go on, Ida.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, great job, Ida.
Awesome. So one business model I really like is the sharing platforms. So it's basically like with cars, there's being parked most of the time, so we can start sharing cars. In Denmark, we have a business called Green Mobility, where basically just in your phone, you'll log on and you can just find the closest car, and it's really good for urban areas. And I think we should get more and more of these with like tools for the house, or like there's so many good areas for this, or party dresses, or basically in all industries. I think these are really good.
Nice one.
Nice
Thank
one,
you, Ida. And you're getting some love for your wall art at the same time.
Thank you.
Right, this is the really important one now. There's a lot of people in EMF watching very closely to see if you can remember their names. So how did we get on in 15, the picture round? Who's going to give us the mic on for this? Or tell us in the chat, what did you put for A? Who is person A? We've got a Monica. We've got a lot of Monicas. The answer is Monica. What about for B? B's a bit
Very
simple.
important one.
Indeed, it's Seb, and C, Dave. C is Anna, true. What about D? Surely trickier is D, because we've not seen, it's not me, Fernanda.
I thought you were going to use weird photos, Colin.
I didn't really have the time. It wasn't Rob, no, but I can see why you'd say that. We've got a right answer though.
They're both good-looking guys, Rob and this particular person.
The answer is Harry. So a few people got Harry correct. That's D. How about E? We've seen E a few times in this cohort as well. Look at that.
Yeah.
Correct answers all around.
Ilma will be pleased with that.
F's got to be trickier. Come on, what have you got for F?
How do you spell this as well? Yes, some good efforts.
Yeah. I'm impressed by the spelling.
Very good.
Excellent.
Rhaenyra made an impression.
Right, Seb, for you, number 16, 2 key components of the Circulytics score.
So the 2 things that get measured to give you a score are outcomes, which is basically your material flows, your ins and outs in the materials, and enablers. So things that enable circular economy to thrive in an organization, things like what are you doing with skills and people? Do you have a circular economy and strategy in place, and what's your circular economy strategy? And we've got enablers and outcomes popping up in the chat, which is great. That's correct.
Are you giving Bonnie a point for saying conditions and outcomes?
I think conditions and outcomes is fine. Yeah, Bonnie, you can have a point.
Well done, Bonnie. And the final one, cities, important players in the food system. There's another mic's on. Last question. Who wants to tell us why cities are important players in the food system? Who got to question number 17?
No one. Oh, Siegfried has gone for urbanization.
Reducing carbon miles, indeed, part of that.
Population growth. 80% of the population live in cities.
Yeah. All right answers.
I heard a stat today on our Circular Economy Weekly show. We do a show Tuesdays at 12 p.m. BST. I'm giving a little plug here. Explore the circular economy. Today we were talking about COVID-19, the pandemic, and food. And Emma Chow was on that session, who leads our food initiative, and she said that 40% of cropland is within 20 kilometers of cities. But a very, very small percentage of that actually goes directly to the cities. So still most food is imported, but it's actually very significant percentages grown in and around cities. So.
Okay, thanks, Seb. Great answers, folks. Who got 17 out of 17? Tell us in the chat window if you reckon you got them all right.
Give us your scores.
Just give us a score, yeah, rather than going down that.
If you didn't get to the questions, you don't get points to them. Just to be a bit harsh about this.
I did have several answers, yeah. 19 out of 17 for one of the
That sounds like some of my old school calculations.
Oh, look, I'm liking these results.
And we can share the quiz and the answers in the Slack group afterwards as well. Super.
Okay, that was a way of reflecting on some of the course material up to now. I know some of the questions probably were quite easy for you to answer as a group, but we're hoping you had some good discussions around a lot of the questions that came up. And of course, this is webinar number 10, but it's not the end of the entire series. And in just a minute time, Anna is going to come on and speak to us about the what's next of all of this and what happens in the immediate future and what's happening in the slightly longer term future as well. So Anna, are you lined up and ready to go?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I am. I'm going to keep it really short. I always say that. I don't know if that's really going to happen. What's next? Next slide, please. Yeah, okay, so firstly, I wanted to talk to you about what the next phase is going to look like. So the collaborative phase, we decided that that's going to start on October the 12th. It'll run for 6 weeks until November 20. And altogether, it will take roughly 25 hours. And the reason why we've chosen to go for 6 weeks is because instead of a 4-day face-to-face workshop, we had to spread it out, and we can't very well expect you to take 4 days out of your busy schedule and sit behind your computer. So 25 hours with a max of 5 hours per week. That's a rough estimate, and we're going to be setting you up in.
When you say 25 hours per week, Anna.
Oh, did I say that?
Yes.
Oh, well, no.
I just saw some people's faces on the stream. Some of them went quite white.
I can imagine they wanted to like pull back their assignment. Maximum of 5 hours per week.
25 hours in total. Yeah.
Like altogether, it would be about 25 hours. Thanks, Seb. That's really useful. Okay, so it's going to be about 25 hours in total. We're going to be setting you up in teams, and the reason why we are going to be doing that is because we want the teams to be as diverse as possible, so people from different backgrounds. Of course, we're going to keep in mind that you all live in different locations in the world. So we will make sure that it won't be too hard to meet each other virtual. And the teams will be made up of roughly 5 people. So the reason we're doing that is because we are going to set you an assignment, and we are going to do that in combination in collaboration with our strategic partners that you can find on our website. So there's some of the companies that we work with, and they'll be working on some, what I would say that's as close as real life assignment as it can be. So thinking about certain topics within circular economy. So you get to meet our network, you get to ask them questions about the project, and yeah, basically quiz them. You'll talk in small groups with them, and we're going to assign you with a mentor, and that's going to be an alumni of last year's From Linear to Circular. It can be an alumni of another program, or it might be somebody from within the foundation. And the last thing we do, so this is all quite practice. This is really circular economy in practice, and really because we believe that by collaborating and peer-to-peer learning, you really learn the most. But we'll also still be going over some content. There's a lot of questions.
There's a couple of cues, Anna. There's a question about, I've just answered the mentors per team, but there was a question about Slack, what's going to happen to Slack. And there was also a question about who participates in this phase.
Yeah, great question. So Slack is going to stay open until August the 15th for the whole group. So 6 weeks after the end of this program. And this second phase is for the people that fill in, the people that we select for the second phase. So that's for the assignment. So the people that,
You need to respond to the assignment, and then we have a limited number of, just by virtue, as you can probably tell from the shape of this program, a limited number of spaces.
Yeah.
And the assignment can be found in Slack, right? It's in, what's the name of the channel, Anna, it's sitting in?
Everybody has received the assignment per email, and it's on Slack, and it's on our LinkedIn community as well.
When's the deadline for that?
The deadline is on the 7th of July, and we'll select a maximum of 80 people for the second phase. You're now with about 400.
Perfect. Okay, keep the questions coming, folks, as they
the
come.
80 people is one benefit of the fact that we've been forced to not do this face-to-face, because we have been able to double our cohort size, which is nice, having got to know many of you over the last 10 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other questions about this part? What's the criteria to pass? You can find all those in the you can find those criteria in the email that I sent out to you. But what we are really looking for in this assignment is that we're looking at what you've learned during these 10 weeks. So of course, we already invited you to join this phase, and that was based on your knowledge of circular economy and whether we believe you can be pioneering, and whether you can really help to scale and accelerate the transition to a circular economy. And now with this next assignment, this final assignment, we want to see what you've learned in these 10 weeks. And can you say a bit more about the content, the assignments we will be working on in teams? We're actually right now shaping them up. Colin, I don't know if there's a latest on that.
I think the biggest thing to say about the content of the next phase is it'll be more focused on practical side of things, so implementation. Some of that will come from listening to and speaking to members of our network. Some of it will come through some of the exercises that we'll be giving you, such as the teamwork and challenge side of things. So it'll be less conceptual, more practical.
Yeah, so, and Siegfried, you ask which of the two questions there needs to be answered more elaboratively. Well, that is in that email and in the form, and I don't know by heart which one was first, but it's really clear when you read it which one it is. Ross asks, will those 24 hours of engagement be flexible? Well, I think that is something that you have to decide on with your team, how much you can put in it. But, you know, when you sign up for this part of the program or you get selected, we do expect you to join in. But we choose people with different backgrounds. And that means in different stages of the program, you might be able to contribute more than in other stages. There will be a final project. So if you don't have a design background, you might not spend as much time on the shaping up of the project to make it look nice. Marta, are you looking for mixed groups? Yeah, we're looking for mixed groups. And so what's the best way to stay connected for those not continuing to the collaborative phase? That's going to be LinkedIn. And we are looking into other ways, but the Slack channel can't stay open indefinite. We basically don't have the bandwidth to engage on so many different platforms. So that will be a little bit tricky, but you still have 6 weeks of the Slack channel. No, we're not going to. So Carolina asks about a certificate. We don't hand out certificates for our programs. So more webinars, that's the next thing that I wanted to talk about. I've sent you a message on Slack about the final webinar of the network edition from Linear to Circular. So we also have another series, and that is for employees of companies within our network. And they're going to be talking about how to look forward, to build back better. But there's always also going to be a focus on finance. So look in in the Slack channel, on the general Slack channel for that invitation, or use this link to sign up for that. And then there's also the Circular Economy show that Seb mentioned, and that's basically a half-an-hour show, and they really are really great. It's half an hour of in-depth stuff about the circular economy. And then, let me see, you're asking a lot of questions. Yeah, so Lipa is saying that Min Yoon created a Google forum that has actually already been distributed. That's also great. She's gonna think about a good way to stay in contact with each other as well. So look for that in the general Slack channel. The webinar videos will be online indefinite. Right, Seb? Well, not indefinite. Yes. They're not going to be gone for a long time.
We'll make them available for you to. We'll make sure you've got access to them beyond Slack, along with an FAQ doc and things like that.
Yeah, and Manasi, the get-together, these are social Zooms. We call them social get-togethers for in case you wanted to continue the conversation with us, just have chats in breakout rooms. It's much smaller, so it'll go fine. And we've actually done that with another cohort, and that really was great fun, just to get to know each other in an informal basis.
And so we will be there, right? We will be there as well.
We will be there, yeah. So, and if you have any more questions, you can post them in the Get Info channel in Slack, or you can post them on LinkedIn. You can also email me, but the best way is to use one of those platforms so that everybody can see your answer and everybody can see the question, see our answer and your question. I think that's it. And then there's one last thing, and that's the next slide. And that is that I sent a feedback form to you, and it would be really great if you could fill that in, because we really, of course, want to improve and be honest and strict and kind. And we look forward to hearing your feedback.
Super, Anna. Thanks for that. Folks, we've been with you for just over an hour now. And how do we unshare this screen? And just wanted to say, it's been since the moment your application forms start coming into us, who knows how many months ago now. We really appreciate seeing those coming in and seeing the depth of quality, depth of talent amongst you all. We knew we were going to have a very difficult job to pick a handful off you for what was going to be at that point the face-to-face workshop. We're really delighted that what we've been able to do is to run this 10-week series with a much bigger cohort than we had originally planned to run with. And speaking for the entire team, I can tell you, this has been an absolute blast. We've enjoyed every minute of it, from running these webinars to interacting with you on Slack. I wish we had more time to have done things like that. I wish, in retrospect now, we'd done a bit more breakout rooms and all that sort of thing. It's been a learning process for us too, but it's been a hell of an enjoyable process. So I just wanted to say thank you from my side, and thank you from the EMF team.
And it's very energizing for us as well to engage with such passionate, driven, intelligent and skilled individuals as we have done throughout this program, and a real sense of momentum around this topic and this idea based on our experiences of engaging with you over these 10 weeks.
Yes, whether you're with us at the next stage or not, for one reason or another, just a big thank you to you, and I hope that this is the first step or another step on way to your future in the circular economy. So thanks very much, everyone. Hope to see you at the social Zooms in the next couple of days. See you later.
Thank you.